Hi, folks. These videos are going to help you understand a little bit more, hopefully, what we call the quantity theory of money, an approach to inflation that is very, very useful for the long run. And we sometimes also link it to the equation of exchange. So we felt that it would be a good idea if you had a little bit of video interaction. You can read about this stuff both in Mankiw, that's in chapter 5, page 105 to 114. But alternatively, I put my sort of provisional book online, some parts of it, and you can see here it's in chapter 9 that I've posted on the Blackboard website. I'd be very interested in your feedback on that. Okay, so we want to start off with something that we call a tautology, something that holds by definition in any country, in any economy. Okay, and that is that in any economy we produce something. Let's think of boxes of cookies, for example, and we would want to think, well, if this is just one good, why would we think of these as people trading? Well, let's suppose that we have chocolate chip and oatmeal cookies, and some people produce chocolate chip cookies and some people produce oatmeal cookies, but they like to eat both oatmeal cookies and chocolate chip cookies. They like to diversify in consumption. So in order to do that, they need to trade, and if they're producing at different times, what they need to do is they need to have this little convention called money that helps them so that do their transactions. The price level, this would be in this case for this very simple one good economy, the price of a box of cookies. This is how much money that people use, that they keep in their pockets in order to do these transactions, to buy and sell boxes of cookies. And then it turns out the speed with which money moves between transactions, we call that velocity. Okay, so this is something that, like I said, this is just a measure of how much money we hold in our pockets and use, and if for a given value of transactions, price times quantity, and it turns out that if we hold less money in our pockets for, let's say, technology, then guess what? The velocity goes up. Why? Because each unit, each piece of money is moving more quickly between transactions. So another way to think about this is we can just, by definition, back out velocity, and velocity is basically nominal GDP over money. So let's suppose that we're an economy and people happen to be holding amongst them collectively 250 units of currency of their money. Let's say that that in a given period, let's say a year, we produce 4,000 boxes of cookies, and each box of cookies cost 1 currency unit. Then guess what? We've just backed out the velocity is 16, and once again we can talk about what determines that velocity. It turns out that one thing that has happened in our lifetimes is automatic tellers. So when we have automatic tellers, it's easier for us to go, let's say, to an automatic teller instead of having to go to a bank teller, a human being, as we used to do maybe 30 or 40 years ago with our little passbooks. So we don't need to store our wealth so much in the form of money when we have automatic tellers. So that means our velocity would go up. We'll also be learning about interest rates. So, for example, we will learn that the interest rate is the opportunity cost of holding money, so that the higher the interest rate is, the more potentially we would lose by holding a bond instead of money. In that case, if interest rates go up, that tends to also increase velocity. But at the same time, we'll also be finding that as a country develops and it becomes more and more sort of financially sophisticated, people tend to use money more, and we can often see a downward trend in velocity. But the whole idea is that velocity is something that is sort of determined by customs and technology in institutions. So anyway, everything that I have told you up till now is a definition. It's a tautology. There is no theory here. But now I'm going to tell you about what we call the quantity theory of money, or sometimes it's called the classical theory. And I'm going to stress that it's a good long-run proposition. And the idea is that we're going to take that equation of exchange and we are going to assume that certain things are fixed or exogenous. So let's think about Q, the quantity of goods and services that we produce. In an earlier in the course, we learned about the production function. The production function has capital, labor, and technology. That has nothing to do with money. No matter how much money we print, that's not going to change the production function. So that's exogenous. Then, as I mentioned, velocity is something that is determined by and large by sort of our institutions. You could call it a technological result of technology. Later on, we're also going to be learning that it's determined by interest rates. But right now, we're going to assume that this guy, velocity, is constant. That is a big assumption here. And we can say that it's largely unchanged in the long run by the level of money. So then we're going to assume that the money is supplied by the central bank, so the central bank can increase or decrease the quantity of money. And so what's left to be determined here is this variable, that's the equilibrium price level. So here's the idea. We're saying that we can just flip this equation. Okay, as I said, let's start here from the bottom. This is determined by the production function. This is determined by our institutions and our sort of our what economists sometimes like to call our transactions technology, and this is what is supplied by the central bank. So this is our only variable here. Now, if we can't change this, and if we can't change this, we cannot change Q. That is, that is determined by our production function. And let's say that we don't really change this. This is constant. The central bank will raise money, and can raise money, for example, and the price level will increase. And you can see that according to this equation, if this guy is fixed and this guy is fixed, then guess what? Money goes up by 10%, for example, prices will go up by 10%. Nothing real changes, okay? And you can see this. Mankiw has a similar little graph here looking at the long-run relationship, a long-run relationship between money and inflation. So you can see that on the horizontal axis, average annual growth of money in percent, and in the vertical axis, this is the average annual growth of, we're using the consumer price index here as an index of inflation, the growth of the consumer price index. We have all these countries here. This red line here is a 45-degree line. You can see that we're not exactly on the 45-degree line, but we're very close, that there tends to be nearly or just about a one-to-one relationship over the long run between money growth and inflation. So in this sense, what we call the quantity theory is a very, very powerful tool to help us understand the underlying forces behind inflation in the long run. Okay?